the Mohammedan law. And today, again, on account of demand from all the participants, we have invited Advocate Rajendra Raurane to discuss with us the very important subject on Mohammedan law. Mr. Raurane has already delivered a lecture on this webinar series, but every time there are new participants from different parts of Maharashtra, and therefore I feel that there is a necessity of formal introduction, even though most of you know him. I request my friend Advocate Viresh Naik to kindly introduce Advocate Rajendra Raurane, today's lecturer. Over to you, Viresh. Viresh, can you hear me?
Yes. Am I audible now?
Yes,
Good
you're
evening,
audible.
Good evening, friends. At the outset, I express my sincere gratitude to Advocate Sangram Desai for giving me an opportunity to introduce our today's speaker, Advocate Rajendra Vishram Raurane, who happens to be my senior, who taught me the initial lessons of this noble profession. I think it is not necessary to give introduction of Advocate Armi Raurane to the advocates practicing in Sindhudurg district, because he is the president of Sindhudurg District Bar Association since 2019. Advocate Raurane sir is hardcore litigation lawyer practicing since last 30 years in civil, criminal as well as revenue sides, during which he has conducted 300 plus sessions cases and thousands of civil suits. His determination towards the profession or law can be sensed from the simple fact that previously on this same platform, he had delivered a fine lecture on order of succession in Mohammedan laws. And at the end of it, the members had raised query in respect of hiba and wasiyat. At that time, he politely addressed that as that was not the topic of his lecture on that day, he could not answer the queries. Thereafter, now he had prepared today's lecture on the topic of wasiyat, that is will, hiba, that is gifts amongst the Mohammedans. That shows his integrity towards the profession, which every junior lawyer must take note of it. We all must have experienced that Mohammedan law is difficult one as it is uncodified and customary law. In today's lecture, I hope that Raurane sir will enlighten all of us in respect of all the niceties in respect of will, gifts in Mohammedan laws, as well as newly enacted legislation in respect of married Muslim women. Now I request Advocate Raurane sir to kindly deliver the lecture. Thank you. Over to Raurane sir.
Raurane, before you start, I will just request all the participants to kindly mute their phones as well as the videos. Kindly switch off your videos. It's very important to get a good bandwidth. Thank you. Yes, Mr. Raurane, you can start.
Good evening, friends. Today we are going to deal with three subjects. One is will, that is wasiyat under Mohammedan law. Second is gift, that is hiba under Mohammedan law. And the last is the Muslim Women Protection of Marriage Act 2019, a new legislation of the Parliament of India. मित्रांनो, हे तीन सब्जेक्ट्स टच करण्यापूर्वी किंवा त्या सब्जेक्टला हात घालण्यापूर्वी आपल्याला मुस्लिम लॉची बॅकग्राऊंड थोडी जाणून घेणं गरजेचं आहे. बिकॉज as you know that Muslim law, Mohammedan law is a divine law. It is a customary law. It is based on the Islamic philosophy, and it is not a codified law. It is just like a Hindu law, which is based on Shastras, Shrutis, Smritis, Upanishads, etc. Likewise, the Mohammedan law is also based on some customs, usages, some dharma granthas, there is Quran, etc. And therefore, in order to understand the status of the will, subject of the will and gift, we must understood the first of all the background of the Islamic law. For that purpose, the basic thing is that as the Mohammedan law is a divine law, it's a customary law. It is not a codified law. It is uncodified customary law of Islamic philosophy, and it is based on mainly Quran. Mohammedan believes then that Quran is the word of God communicated to Prophet Muhammad. Secondly, this law is based on the another source, that is Sunnat or Hadith. That means the traditions of the Islam religion. Thirdly, the main source is the Ijma, that is the consensus of the opinion. And fourth source of Mohammedan law is Qiyas. Qiyas is the analogical deduction. And therefore, as you know, this is not a act which is passed by any parliament, but it is a customary law. And therefore, the customs and the usages are the main sources of the particular law. Now, in our India, to some subjects, this law is made applicable to the Mohammedans. The Article 25 of our Indian Constitution has protected the customs and equitable sources of the religions, various religions, as well as Hindus, as well as Muslims, as well as other religious peoples residing in India. So they are protected by their personal laws, and their personal laws are made applicable to certain subjects. For example, inheritance, succession, then the will, gift, right of preemption, etc. And all other subjects are regarding all other subjects, Muslims are governed by the common law of India, like criminal procedure code, IPC. They are applicable to all the domiciles residing in India. And I already discussed in the last lecture that this is, as it is an uncodified law. Mullah has written a good book. Mullah has studied the Muslim communities, the persons of Muslim religions, Muslim sect, subsects residing in India, and he wrote a very good book, that is a very reputed, known as very reputed book, Mullah's Principles of Mohammedan Law. And he has written this book in a fashion of an act. He has divided the subject into the chapters and sections, and therefore it can be easily applied. It can be easily used. You can see that in most of the judgments of High Courts and Supreme Courts, these Mullah's Principles of Mohammedan Law, written by Justice M. Hidayatullah, the former Chief Justice of India, this book is referred along with the chapters and sections. And therefore, I have also used this book for my compilation. Now, friends, the last time we covered the subject of succession under Mohammedan law as applicable in India. Now, we are going to start with the will, and after that gift, and after that a new legislation, very interesting legislation, the new act which is enacted by our parliament to protect the Muslim woman from the right on marriage. So that is also an important legislation that we are going to deal with today. Now, as far as will is concerned, आपल्याला मृत्यूपत्रा संदर्भात किंवा बक्षीसपत्रा संदर्भात मोहम्मदन लॉच्या अंडर काही केसेस हाताळण्याची वेळ आली किंवा प्रसंग आला तर आपलं प्रिपरेशन पाहिजे की बाबा विल आणि गिफ्ट किंवा इनहेरिटन्स या संदर्भात मुस्लिम लॉ आपल्या इंडियामध्ये कसा अप्लाय केला जातो, त्याच्यामध्ये काय तरतुदी आहेत, त्याच्यामध्ये काय फरक आहे, आपल्याला सहज रेग्युलर प्रॅक्टिसमध्ये हिंदू लॉ कायदे खालच्या केसेस बऱ्याच वेळा हाताळायला प्रसंग येतो. फार एक्सेप्शनल सर्कमस्टन्सेस मध्ये मुस्लिम लिटिगेशन्स येतात, पण ती मुस्लिम लिटिगेशन्स पण अत्यंत महत्वाचे आहेत. आणि अशा वेळी आपण ऍज अ डिफेन्स, ऍज अ रिप्रेझेंटेटिव्ह, ऍज ऍडव्होकेट ऑफ द डिफेंडंट और ऍडव्होकेट ऑफ द प्लेंटिफ असं काम करत असताना, आपल्याला सूट ड्राफ्ट करत असताना या विल संदर्भात आपल्याला मोहम्मदन लॉची माहिती पाहिजे, गिफ्ट संदर्भात माहिती पाहिजे, आणखीन कैफियत लिहित असताना देखील बाबा विलचा स्टेटस काय मोहम्मदन लॉ मध्ये, मोहम्मदन लॉ मध्ये गिफ्टचं स्टेटस काय आहे, हे आपल्याला बेसिकली माहिती असलं तर आपल्याला फार अवघड जात नाही आणि आपल्याला त्या वेगळ्या पद्धतीच्या कामामध्ये काम करत असताना आपल्याला चांगल्या प्रकारचं काम न्याय पक्षकाराला मिळवून देता येतं. तर ह्या करता आपल्याला विल हा सब्जेक्ट स्टार्ट करण्यापूर्वी आपल्याला सेक्शन 39 हे जे बुक आहे मुल्लाज प्रिन्सिपल्स ऑफ मोहम्मदन लॉ, ह्या पुस्तकातील सेक्शन 39चा रेफरन्स घेणं गरजेचं आहे सुरुवातीला. बिकॉज this particular will is a testamentary document, is a testamentary subject, and therefore administration of the estate of deceased Mohammedan हा जो काही सब्जेक्ट 39 मध्ये दिलेला आहे तो पहिल्यांदा आपल्याला पाहणं गरजेचं आहे. कारण विल मध्ये लिमिट्स दिलेले आहेत मोहम्मडन पर्सनला बांधून ठेवलेला आहे. एवढ्या एवढ्या पर्सेंटेज मध्ये एवढ्या एवढ्या प्रकारच्या एवढ्या एवढ्या एक्सटेंट पर्यंतच तू विल साठी हे आहेस, पात्र आहेस, एलिजिबल आहेस, आणि त्याच्या पलीकडे तुला जाता येणार नाही असं मुस्लिम धर्माच्या कायद्यानं त्याला बांधून ठेवलेलं आहे. त्यामुळे सेक्शन 39 इज ऍडमिनिस्ट्रेशन ऑफ द इस्टेट ऑफ द डिसीज मोहम्मडन. मी या थोडक्यात आपल्याला सेक्शन वाचून दाखवतो. द इस्टेट ऑफ द डिसीज मोहम्मडन इज टू बी अप्लाइड सक्सेसिव्हली इन फॉलोइंग मॅनर. सक्सेस
Hello. Hello. Ravani, your voice, we have lost you. Hello. I request everybody to hold on for a moment. Mr. Ravani is reconnecting. Mr. Ravran is facing some network problems. So right now he's switching from one connection to another. It'll take another 5 minutes. That's what he told me. Just please bear with me for a moment.
Because the host has muted you. Hello. Hello.
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes. Sorry for disturbance. थोडं Wi-Fi network ह्याच्यामध्ये problem आला. So we are reading section 39 of the Mullah's Principles of Mohammedan Law. Administration of the estate of deceased Mohammedan. There is a sequence is given under Mohammedan law how to administer the estate of the deceased Mohammedan after his death. So we will read this section. The estate of the deceased Mohammedan is to be applied successively in the following manners. His funeral expenses and deathbed charges. पहिले बाजूला काढायचे. Expenses for obtaining probate, letter of administration and succession certificate. हे दुसऱ्यांदा for second priority हे बाजूला काढायचे. Then wages due for service rendered to the deceased within 3 months next preceding his death by any laborer or domestic servants. हे expenses बाजूला काढायचे. Other dates of the deceased according to their respective priorities. जे काय आणखीन देणी असतील या deceased Mohammedanची ती पहिल्यांदा बाजूला काढायची. हे चार्ज बाजूला काढून झाल्यानंतर फिफ्थ the legacies not exceeding 1/3 of what remains after all above payments have been made. ही वरची देणी त्याची भागवल्यानंतर जे काही शिल्लक इस्टेट मध्ये राहते त्यातला 1/3 शेअर फक्त ही प्रोव्हिजन कशासाठी लिगसीसाठी करायची. विल न जर त्याचं काही विल करून ठेवलं असेल तर त्या 1/3 ह्याच्या प्रॉपर्टी मध्ये पुरतच मर्यादित ते विल ऍप्लिकेबल होतं. इट कॅनॉट एक्सीड to the 1/3 of the rest of the property which is remained after payment of the debts. इस्लामिक फिलॉसॉफीनं इस्लामिक लॉनं मयत व्यक्तीला त्याच्या मृत्यूनंतर पहिलं त्यानं कर्जमुक्त करायचंय. त्याची ती सगळी देणी भागवायची. त्याला मोक्षाला पाठवायचं असेल त्याला पैगंबरवासी करायचं हे मे बी द इंटेन्शन. तर पहिलं त्याच्यामध्ये इस्लामिक लॉ मध्ये इट्स ऍप्लिकेबल टू ऑल द सेक्ट टू द शिया ऑर टू द सुन्नी एंटायर वर्ल्ड मध्ये ह्या इस्लामिक लॉ संदर्भात आफ्टर द डेथ ही हॅज टू पे इज डेट्स. आता डेट संपल्यानंतर 1/3 फक्त लिगसीज. त्यानंतर लास्ट प्रायोरिटी इज प्रायोरिटी नंबर 6 द रेसिड्यू. हे सगळं झाल्यानंतर पहिली देणी संपली त्यानंतर जर मृत्यूपत्र केलं तर ते 1/3 उरलेल्यातलं शिल्लक ठेवलं जे त्यातलं उरलेलं 2/3 आहे दॅट इज द रेसिड्यू. and residue is to be distributed amongst the heirs of the deceased according to the law of the particular sect. हे उरलेले 2/3 प्रॉपर्टी आहे ती त्यांच्या वारसांना त्या पर्टिक्युलर सेक्टच्या इनहेरिटन्सच्या रूल्स प्रमाणे डिव्हॉल्व होते. सो हा द सिक्वेन्स आहे. त्याच्यामध्ये विलला जागा दिलेली आहे आणि विल जो आहे हा विल 1/3 पुरता मर्यादित आहे. कर्जमुक्त त्याची कर्ज सगळी फेडल्याच्या नंतर. नाव इन द बॅकग्राऊंड ऑफ दिस sequence of the devolution of the property of the deceased Mohammedan, we'll go to the chapter of the will. So will is covered by these principles of Mullah's Principles of Mohammedan Law by Justice M. Hidayatullah. In chapter 9 and section 115. Here, section 115 is regarding the person capable of making the will. Under Mohammedan law, subject to the limitations hereinafter set forth, every Mohammedan of a sound mind and not a minor may be disposed of his property by will. So there are only two conditions. He must be of sound mind and he must be a major. The majority under Mohammedan law terminates on completion of 15 years of age. This position was continued up to 1875. In 1875, one act came into force. It was passed by the British government and it was made applicable to the entire India, every domicile of India. That act was Indian Majority Act. As per section 3 of Indian Majority Act, the person shall deem to have attained majority when he shall have completed the age of 18 years. And as this act is superseded to this particular age of majority, after 1875, the minority in case of for the purpose of wills, gift, work, they are terminates on the completion of 18 years. So as of now, the age of majority is 18 years. Prior to 1875, it was 15 years. Now section 116 of this act, of this law book, is regarding the form of will. The form of will. It is very interesting provision regarding the will under Mohammedan law. A will, that is wasiyat, may be made either verbally or in writing. And even though it is in writing, even though it is reduced into writing, it need not be signed by testator. And also it need not be signed by attesting witnesses. So this is a unique and a very different provision as regards the will under Mohammedan law. Mohammedan law मध्ये वसियत will ही ओरल चालते. त्याच्यावर त्याला टेस्टेटरची सिग्नेचर नसली तरी चालते. जर ती रिटर्न मध्ये असेल तर त्याच्यावर अटेस्टिंग विटनेस हवेतच असे नाही. त्यामुळे will, oral will can be also proved. Oral will also is admissible and it is valid under Mohammedan law. Now section 170, the bequest to heirs. There are certain limitations put on the Mohammedan person while execution of the will. That one of the limitation is bequest to heirs. A bequest to an heir is not valid unless the other heirs consent to the bequest after the death of testator. Any single heir may also consent so as to bind his own share. So bequest cannot be executed in favor of heir. वारसाच्या नावाने मृत्यूपत्र करता येत नाही. ह्याचं कारण एनॉलॉजिकल काय असेल तर आपल्याला पूर्वीचा सेक्शन जो 39 वाचून दाखवला आपल्याला. शेअर्सला प्रोटेक्ट केले. 2/3 जे वारसांसाठी त्यांना प्रोटेक्ट केलेलं आहे. 2/3 प्रॉपर्टीसाठी मुस्लिम पर्सनला वसियत विल करता येत नाही. त्यांचा इंटरेस्ट प्रोटेक्ट केलेला आहे. त्यामुळे मृत्यूपत्र वारसांच्या नावे करता येत नाही. करता येतं परंतु केलं समजा तर आफ्टर द डेथ ऑफ द टेस्टेटर the other heirs must give the consent to that will, then and then only that will can be complete or operative. If any one single heir or if any heir says that no, I am not admitting this will is not binding on me, that will is inoperative. Therefore, will in favor of heirs is not operative unless the heirs consent thereto. So this is the limitation given under the Mohammedan law to the Mohammedan person for execution of the will. Now there is an explanation to this particular subject of will, subject of wills to the heirs. There is, in determining whether a person is or is not an heir, regards his head not to the time of the execution of the will, but to the time of the testator's death. मृत्यूपत्र करत असताना ते वारसाला करायचं नाहीये. वारसाला वारस सोडून इतरांना करायचं आहे. परंतु तो जो काही वारस जो आहे तो वारस कुठला धरायचा आहे. द रिलेव्हंट टाइम इज द एक्झिक्युशन ऑफ द विल, दॅट द डेथ ऑफ द टेस्टेटर अँड नॉट ऍट द टाइम ऑफ रायटिंग ऑफ द विल. आता याला इलिस्ट्रेशन त्यांनी दिलंय. ए मोहम्मदन डाईज सर्वायव्हिंग सन, ए फादर अँड ए पॅटर्नल ग्रँडफादर बिहाइंड हिम. त्याच्या मागे मृत्यूच्या वेळी त्याचे मुलगा असेल, वडील असेल आणि पॅटर्नल ग्रँडफादर आजोबा असतील. हिअर ॲज अ फादर इज अलाइव, द पॅटर्नल ग्रँडफादर इज नॉट एन हेअर. Therefore, if on the moment of the death of deceased Mohammedan, if father is alive, then the father's father, that the grandfather, is not the heir, and therefore a will in favor of grandfather is valid. So this is the example for the illustration. दुसरं illustration त्यांनी दिलंय की if A executes the will in favor of father's father, आजोबांच्या नावाने will त्यानं केलं, जसं आपल्याला सांगितलं. Besides the father, there is a besides father's father, there is a father and there is a son alive. And if the father dies in the lifetime of testator, then automatically father's fathers become the heir. And therefore, at the time of death of the executor, of the testator, father's father become the heir, and therefore a will executed in favor of father's father is inoperative unless the son gives the consent, because son is the another heir who is alive. So this is the illustration. The position, the situation at the time of death of the testator is to be looked into. It is the relevant, and therefore this particular explanation is given under this section. Now, section 118 in this particular book, limits of testamentary powers. मुस्लिम कायद्यानं जसं मी मागाशी आपल्याला सांगितलं की मृत्यूपत्र करण्यासाठी मुस्लिम व्यक्तीवर लिमिटेशन्स ठेवलेले आहेत, काही बंधनं ठेवलेली आहेत. ही बंधनं त्या मुस्लिम इस्लामिक कस्टम्स, इस्लामिक फिलॉसॉफी वर आधारित आहेत. त्या धर्माची काही आयडियोलॉजीज आहेत. त्यानुसार शेअर असतात, त्याच्या हेअर्सना प्रोटेक्ट केलेत, देणेकरांना प्रोटेक्ट केलेत. ते आपल्याला हिंदू कायद्यामध्ये दिसत नाही. डेटर्सना हिंदू कायद्यामध्ये आपल्याला बघा की एखादी व्यक्ती मयत झाली तर त्याची जर काही देणी असतील, त्याचे काही क्रेडिटर्स असतील, त्याला विशेष असं महत्वाचं काही रिलीफ अशी दिलेली नाही. त्यांना लिटिगेशन करायला लागेल. ते जर वारसांकडे गेले त्यांच्या माघारी, बाबा तुमच्या वडिलांनी आमच्याकडे पैसे घेतले होते, हे बघा त्यांचे डॉक्युमेंट आहेत, व्यवहार केला आहे, इतके पैसे माझे यायचे आणि माझे ते पैसे वडिलांकडे यायचे होते, तुम्ही ते वारस आहात तर तुम्ही आम्हाला ते द्या. वारस म्हटलं की आम्हाला कल्पना नाही, वडिलांनी आम्हाला काही विचारलं नव्हतं, आमच्यावर काही ते बाइंडिंग नाही, वडिलांनी आम्हाला विचारून व्यवहार केला नव्हता, तुम्ही आम्हाला विचारून वडिलांची व्यवहार केला नव्हता, असं करून ते उडवून टाकू शकतात. पण ही मुस्लिम कायद्यामध्ये नाही. धर्माची जी काही आयडियोलॉजी आहे ती अशी आहे की मुस्लिम व्यक्तीला त्याच्या मृत्यूनंतर त्याच्या इस्टेटतून त्याची सर्व देणी भागवूनच मुक्त व्हायचं आहे. तोपर्यंत वारसांचा हक्क ऍक्रिव्ह होत नाही. पहिले त्याचे सगळे देणेकरी, त्यानंतर त्याची इच्छा ती सुद्धा 1/3 पोर्शन पुरती मृत्यूपत्रासंदर्भात, त्यानंतर जे काय राहील ते 2/3 त्यांच्या हेअर्सला जातं. पण हेअर्सचा इंटरेस्ट त्यांनी प्रोटेक्ट केलाय, फिक्स केलाय. तो हिंदू कायद्यामध्ये दिसत नाही. हिंदू कायद्यामध्ये आपली स्वतःची प्रॉपर्टी, जी सेल्फ अक्वायर्ड प्रॉपर्टी असेल किंवा अँसेस्ट्रल प्रॉपर्टी मधला शेअर असेल हिंदू व्यक्तीचा, तो त्याला त्या हिंदू कायद्यानं फ्रीडम दिलेला आहे की तो डायव्हर्ट करू शकतो, कुठेही कोणाला देऊ शकतो. That provision is not seen in under the Mohammedan law. Therefore, there are limits, testamentary limits given to the deceased Mohammedan as far as the will is concerned. Here, that provision is enumerated in section 118 of this particular book. A Mohammedan cannot by will dispose of more than 1/3 of the surplus of his estate after the payment of funeral expenses and dates. Bequest in excess of the legal third cannot take effect unless the heirs consent thereto after the death of testator. सगळी देणी भागवल्यानंतर, फ्युनरल एक्सपेन्सेसची देणी खर्च बाजूला काढल्यानंतर जे काही उरेल त्यातल्या 1/3 प्रॉपर्टी पुरतं मर्यादित मृत्यूपत्र मुस्लिम व्यक्तीला करता येतं. And if that will exceeds to this legal 1/3, legal 1/3, the terminology used is the legal 1/3. If the will exceeds the limits of this legal 1/3, then it can be legalized subject to the consents of the heirs. And if heirs don't give the consent, that will is inoperative for the exceeded portion. So up to 1/3 it is valid, but up to for the exceeded portion it is not operative. This particular issue came before Bombay High Court and also before the Rajasthan High Court in the year 1989 and 1986. Before Bombay High Court, there are 2 division bench judgments on this point, that if the will is exceeded to the legal 1/3, then it is inoperative, and it can be operative only subject to the consents of the heirs. This view is taken in AIR 1989 Bombay page number 1, AIR 1989 Bombay page number 1, then AIR 1986 Bombay page number 357, AIR 1986 Bombay page number 357, and AIR 1971 Rajasthan page number 149. I repeat, AIR 1971 Rajasthan page number 149, I'm sorry. Therefore, this particular issue is decided in these 3 judgments, and it is also held by their lordships of High Court that the bequest in excess of legal 1/3 is inoperative, and it can be legalized only after the consent, if the consent is given by the heirs. Now, these particular provisions appears to be solely for the benefits of the heirs. It will be seen from these 2 sections, preceding sections, that Mohammedan person is put the limits for the execution of will in 2 ways. Number 1, as regards the person to whom property may be bequeathed, a person to whom, because other than shares he has to bequeath the property, not to the sharers. Then as regards to the extent to which the property is bequeathed. So it is limited by 2 ways, to a person to whom property is bequeathed, and as regards the extent to which property is bequeathed. He can bequeath only as regards to the legal 1/3. The only case in which the testamentary disposition is binding upon the heirs is where the bequest does not exceed legal 1/3, and it is made to the person who is not an heir. If the will is executed to the limit of legal 1/3, and if it is executed in favor of a person who is not an heir, this will is binding on all the heirs. Without for that purpose, the consent is not required. So these limits are given under Mohammedan law for the will to the Mohammedan person, and if he fulfills this particular 2 conditions, then will is a valid document, and therefore whenever any client comes to you, and if whenever the Mohammedan client comes to you and says that yes, साहेब आम्हाला हे मृत्यूपत्र करायचे, माझी ही प्रॉपर्टी आहे आणि मला माझं मृत्यूपत्र करायचं, त्यावेळी आपली एक ऍडव्होकेट म्हणून जबाबदारी काय राहते, आपल्याला त्याच्याकडे इंटरोगेटरी करायला लागेल. भाऊ तुझी देणी किती आहे, ती देणी तुला तुझ्या पुढच्या आयुष्यामध्ये भागवण्यासाठी तू काय त्याची हे सोय केलेली आहेस का, ते देण्याच्या वेळ केल्यानंतर उरतं किती, साधारणतः अंदाज घ्यावा लागेल. हे इतकं सरप्लस आहे, त्या सरप्लसचं 1/3 तुम्हाला मृत्यूपत्र ड्राफ्ट करून देता येतं. आणि जर का मृत्यूपत्र तुम्ही सगळ्या प्रॉपर्टीचं गेला तर ते टिकणार नाही. इट विल बी इनऑपरेटिव्ह फॉर वॉन्ट ऑफ दिस पर्टिक्युलर मॅन्डेटरी प्रोव्हिजन्स विच आर गिवन अंडर द मुस्लिम कस्टमरी लॉ. आणि म्हणून ह्या बेसिक प्रिन्सिपल्स जे आहेत बिहाइंड दिस पर्टिक्युलर विल, हे आपल्याला विचारात घेणं आणि लक्षात घेणं अत्यंत जरुरीचं आहे. नाव ही जी 2 एक्सेप्शन्स दिलेली आहेत, दिस एक्सेप्शन्स संदर्भात काय प्रोव्हिजन आहे ते आपल्याला पुढे बघायला मिळते. The bequest is in excess to legal 1/3 may be validated by consent of the heirs, so that can be validated subject to the consent of the heir, as I have already told to you. Similarly, the bequest to an heir may be rendered valid by consent of other heirs. आता जे लिमिट दिले हेअर्सना करता येत नाही. समजा मी एखाद्या मुस्लिम व्यक्तीने हेअर्सच्या नावे मृत्यूपत्र केलं, एका हेअरच्या नावे केलं, एका मुलाच्या नावे केलं, 4 मुलं आहेत किंवा आणि मुली आहेत आणि एका मुलाच्या नावे केलं. आफ्टर द डेथ ऑफ टेस्टेटर, when the time of administration of the estate of the Mohammedan comes, if the other heirs came forward and said that yes, our father has bequeathed the property in favor of our elder son or younger son, whatever he may be, and we give consent to that, we have no objection whatsoever for the will, then will can be validated. But there is a condition of the consent of the heirs. So these are the provisions regarding this validity of the will if it is excess to the 1/3, legal 1/3, and if it is bequeathed to in favor of the heir. Here also we will see the intention of the philosophy of the Islamic law to protect the interest of the heirs. If there is no consent of the legal heir, then the remaining 2/3 must devolve upon the heirs. तो त्यांचा अधिकार आहे आणि तो त्यांचा अधिकार त्यांना घ्यायसाठी डिसीज मोहम्मदन मृत्यूपत्रानं त्यांचा अधिकार हिरावून घेऊ शकत नाही. त्यांनी स्वतः सोडलं, स्वतः कन्सेंट दिलं तरच. Now section 120, bequest to unborn person. Here at the here a similar provision as it is in Hindu law. The bequest to unborn person is void. It is not legal. But a bequest to a child in the mother's womb, it is valid, provided that the child must born within 6 months from the date of the will. So that provision is there. It can be executed in the child in the womb of the mother, but there is a condition that the child must born within 6 months from the date of the will. Then section 121 of this book says that if the legatee does not survive the testator, the legacy will lapse and form part of the estate of the testator. If the will is executed and the beneficiary dies prior to the testator, is a prepounder we will say, if he died prior to the testator, then the will lapse and the property will be retained as a property of the deceased government. Then section 128 of the book is a revocation of the bequest. It is also a similar, like a little similar provision of the Hindu law. In Hindu law also, will can be revoked by executing codicil or the subsequent will. The last will prevail. Here in 128, it is stated that a bequest may be revoked either expressly or by implication. So either expressly or by implication, in the lifetime, testator can revoke the will. So there is no necessity of any subsequent document. He declared that this is I executed this will, but I revoke it. That is sufficient. So expressly and by implication also, if the property is bequeathed to a person by a Mohammedan person in his lifetime, but prior to death, if he disposed of that property, if he alienated that property, then by implication it is to be said that the will is revoked. Therefore, only because he has executed the will, he is not bound to keep that property as it is till his death. He can dispose, and by implication he can revoke the will. Section 130, the subsequent section says the revocation by subsequent will. A bequest to a person is revoked by a bequest in a subsequent will of a same property to another person. Therefore, it is very clear that under Mohammedan law, once a bequest is made, when a will is executed, that will can be revoked, that will can be cancelled by executing a subsequent will by giving that property to another person. So that is also available in Mohammedan law as far as revocation of will is concerned. Then section 131 is a probate of Mohammedan will. So आपल्याला प्रश्न निर्माण होईल की बाबा probate लागतं की नाही लागतं. As it is in Hindu law, probate is required to prove. If it is disputed, then the probate is required. But here no probate is required. No probate is mandatory. A Mohammedan will may, after due proof, be admitted in evidence even though no probate had been obtained. So this is a important one of the provision that probate is also not necessary. So the summary, if you see the summary of the will, the subject will under the Mohammedan law, that first of all, the will need not be written. Will can be verbal. It need not be signed by the testator. Attesting witnesses are not required. The will is to be executed limited to the 1/3 after payment of the debts. It cannot be executed in favor of heirs. If it is executed, it can be legalized by the consent of other heirs, and the will can be revoked by implications, by express declaration, or by implications, or by execution of the subsequent will. So this is the provisions. These are the provisions under Mohammedan law as regards the will. And therefore, it is very interesting to know that it is not a similar provision as it is found in Hindu law. In Mohammedan law, self-acquired property and ancestral property is not differentiated. The Mohammedan person having in his hands the entire property at the time of death is his absolute property. There is no any difference between ancestral property, tenanted property, or self-acquired property. All the property in the hands of this is Mohammedan, he is the absolute owner. And therefore, he is at liberty to dispose only 1/3, legal 1/3 to the by way of bequest, and another 2/3 will devolve upon the heirs. And the another important aspect which here we must know that there is no life, the birthright in Mohammedan law, as it is we discussed at the time of discussing the law of inheritance. There is no birthright. मुस्लिम व्यक्तीला त्याच्या आयुष्यामध्ये त्याच्याकडे आलेल्या प्रॉपर्टीचा ऍब्सोल्यूट ओनर बनवलेला आहे. त्याच्या आयुष्यामध्ये जी प्रॉपर्टी त्याची असेल त्याचा तो उपभोग स्वतः घेऊ शकतो. त्याच्या मृत्यूपर्यंत त्याच्या कुठल्याही हेरला त्याच्यामध्ये हक्क सांगता येत नाही. अँड देअरफॉर इन द लाईफ टाइम ऑफ ancestor, the heir cannot file a suit for partition under Mohammedan law. His right accrue after the death of ancestor. Until then, he has absolutely no right in the property of the ancestor. Ancestor is the exclusive owner of the property. Now we will turn towards the another subject, that is the gift, hiba, which is called under Mohammedan law. This subject is covered under chapter number 11 of this book. See section 138, the first section relating to this gift. It is the gift is defined. Hiba or gift is a transfer of property made immediately and without any exchange by one person to another and accepted by or on behalf of another. So there are ingredients. Hiba is a transfer of property, that is immediate transfer. It must be without any exchange, and it must be accepted by the donee or on behalf of the donee. These are the main ingredients given under section 138. Section 139 says, who is the person capable of executing the gift? A person capable of making the gift. Every Mohammedan of a sound mind and not a minor may dispose of his property by gift, as it is we saw in case of will. A major person and majority attains at the age of 18, right from 1875, when the Indian Majority Act came into force. Prior to that, it was a 15 years. Then section 140, gift with the intention to defraud the creditor is voidable at the option of creditor. इथे परत देणेकरी आले. इस्लामिक लॉ न ह्या क्रेडिटर्सना हे इतकी प्रायोरिटी दिलेली आहे, त्यांची आयडिओलॉजी, माणूस मृत्यू झाला की त्याची देणी राहता कामा नयेत शिल्लक कुठली, कारण तो त्याच्या प्रॉपर्टीचा ऍब्सोल्यूट मालक बनवलेला आहे. त्यानं आपल्या आयुष्यामध्ये आपलं जीवन जगत असताना जर काही देणी करून ठेवली तर ती देणी त्यानंच फेडायची आहेत. त्यांच्या वारसांनी फेडायचे, वारसांनी फेडायची नाहीयेत, त्यांनीच फेडायची आहेत आणि उरलेलं वारसांनी द्यायचंय. हिंदू कायद्यामध्ये आपल्याला कसं ती जे वारस जे असते ते डायरेक्ट क्लास 1 हेअर्स, क्लास 2 हेअर्स डायरेक्ट प्रॉपर्टी डिव्हॉल्व होते, ते मालक होतात. मग क्रेडिटरनं ह्याच्या मागून फिरायचं, त्याच्या मागून फिरायचं, माझी देणी द्या, सूट फाईल करायचा. तो म्हणणार माझ्यावर फायटिंग नाही, माझ्यावर शेअर नाही, ते आम्ही एकत्र नव्हतो राहत, विभक्त होतो. माय राईट इज बर्थ राईट. Not available in Mohammedan law, and therefore this provision might have been made by the Islamic customary law. Section 114 of this act, gift with intent to defraud the creditor is voidable at the instance of creditor. For example, a Mohammedan person has a loan of more than 50 lakhs. He is having property worth rupees 25 lakhs. तो असं म्हणणार की बाबा 50 लाखाचं कर्ज आहे तर मी काय फेडू शकत नाही. माझी प्रॉपर्टी 25 लाखापर्यंत जाईल, मी प्रॉपर्टी गिफ्ट करून टाकतो, तो जाऊन दे कुठं ते काय वसूल करायला. गिफ्टला काय मला हेअरला द्यायचं बंधन नाही, 1/3चं बंधन नाही, कसलीच बंधन नाही. गिफ्ट ही सगळ्या पूर्ण प्रॉपर्टीची करू शकतो, ती करून टाकायची. नो, इथं प्रोटेक्शन दिलेलं आहे क्रेडिटर्सना. आणि अशा प्रकारचं विल जर का एखाद्या मुस्लिम व्यक्तीने केलं की ज्याचं देणं जास्ती आहे आणि याला काही शिल्लकच ठेवलं नाही देण्याला आणि गिफ्ट करून टाकला आपल्या हयातीत, तर क्रेडिटर कोर्टात जाऊ शकतो फॉर डिक्लेरेशन ऑफ द गिफ्ट दॅट इट इज व्हाईड, इट इज एक्झिक्युटेड टू डिफ्रॉड माय ड्यूज. जसं आपल्याला गेल्या सब्जेक्ट मध्ये आपल्या लक्षात आलं की इन अ पार्टिशन सूट अंडर मोहम्मदन लॉ a creditor can intervene, he can be implicated, he can come under order 1 rule 10 to join him as a party, and he can pray to the court that stop the partition, I am the creditor, I am the priority holder under the Mohammedan law, this is the documents, this is Mohammedan was owing to me this particular amount, these are the proof, please first of all satisfy my debts, and then if the property remain, go for partition. That right is given to creditor under the partition suit under Mohammedan law. And therefore, here also, the creditor can file a suit for declaration that the gift is void because it is executed to defraud me. माझे पैसे बुडवण्यासाठी जर गिफ्ट केलं असेल तिसऱ्या माणसाला, तर नो, पहिल्यांदा माझे पैसे द्यायचे त्या माणसाला, ते पैसे त्यांनी द्यायचे आणि मग त्याला गिफ्ट करायचं उरलेल्या प्रॉपर्टीचं. So this is the protection is given under this Mohammedan law to the creditors of the deceased Mohammedan. Now section 141 is a gift to unborn person is void. Unborn person च्या favor gift आपल्याला करता येत नाही. Section 142 extent of donor's power, इथं डिफरन्स त्यांनी केलेला आहे. मी विल कडे त्यांना सांगितलंय मुस्लिम माणसाला 1/3 पर्यंतच तुला लिमिट्स दिलेले आहेत, त्याच्या बाहेर तुला जाता येणार नाही, उरलेला 2/3 तुला वारसाना द्यायचा आहे. मग तू वारसाना दिलास तर वारसाने कबूल केलं तरच जाईल, नाही तर वारसांकडेच जाणार. कन्सेंट हा वारसांचा म्हणजे वारसाने कन्सेंट दिला नाही दिला हा विषय नाहीये, फक्त दिला की नाही एवढंच बघायचंय. मग देत असेल तर कन्सेंट तर ते व्हॅलिड झालं, पण नाही दिला तर ते इनव्हॅलिड झालं. तसं ह्या गिफ्ट मध्ये त्यांना लिमिट्स दिलेले आहेत. सेक्शन 142 सेज ए गिफ्ट ॲज डिस्टिंग्विश्ड फ्रॉम ए विल may be made of a whole of the donor's property and it may be made even to the heirs. जी दोन लिमिटेशन्स घातलेली होती तिथे काढली धर्मानं. हयातीमध्ये तू दान करून टाक, तुला करायचं ते, फक्त क्रेडिटरला देणेकरांना बसवू नकोस. तुझ्या हयातीमध्ये तू ऍब्सोल्यूट ओनर आहेस, तुझ्या हयातीत काय प्रॉपर्टी दान करायची करून टाक. वारसाला केलीस चालते, वारसाच्या बाहेर केलीस तरी चालते, पूर्ण प्रॉपर्टी केली तरी चालते, फक्त क्रेडिटर्सला फसवायचं नाही. This is the ideology behind this particular gift. And even it is said under the provisions of this gift of Mohammedan law permits a man to gift away his entire property during his lifetime so as to even disinherit his heirs. वारसांच्या हक्कावर गदा आणून सुद्धा हक्कच नाहीये त्यांना, आपण हक्क म्हणू शकत नाही, कारण हक्क कधी प्राप्त होतो? मृत्यूनंतर. हे हयातीत गिफ्ट करणार आहे. इट इज द इमिजिएट ट्रान्सफर. त्यामुळं मृत्यूपत्र हा मृत्यूसमयी ओपन होणारा डॉक्युमेंट आहे. गिफ्ट डीड हा इमिजिएटली ओपन होणारा डॉक्युमेंट आहे. तो गिफ्ट करत असताना तो स्वतःच्या वारसांना सुद्धा डिसइनहेरिट करू शकतो मुस्लिम व्यक्ती. अशा इथपर्यंत गिफ्टला त्यांना लिबर्टी, त्यांना प्रिव्हिलेज दिलेला आहे. नाउ सेक्शन 147 writing is not necessary. This is also very liberal and unique provision under the Mohammedan law, which is totally different than the provisions under Hindu law or any other law. Writing is not essential to the validity of the gift, either movable, gift of the property, either movable or immovable. So writing at all is not necessary. Gift can be verbal, can be oral. Writing is not necessary. This is the basic principle. Then here at the time of considering this provision that oral gift is also valid under Mohammedan law, we must see the difference in between the other provisions as applicable to the Hindu law and the gift under the Mohammedan law. असा कंपेअर करून आपण स्टडी केला तो ग्रास्पिंगला किंवा आपल्याला लक्षात ठेवायला तो चांगला होतो. आपल्याला मुस्लिम बक्षीस पत्र आणि हिंदू बक्षीस पत्रामध्ये नेमका काय फरक आहे, विल मध्ये काय फरक आहे, मुस्लिम मध्ये काय आहे, हिंदू लॉ मध्ये काय. तसा सेक्शन 122 to 129 of the Transfer of Property Act deals with the subject of gift. Now, as per section 123 of the Transfer of Property Act, gift of immovable property must be effected by a registered instrument signed by the donor and attested by at least 2 witnesses. A registered instrument signed by the donor and attested by at least 2 witnesses. Gift of a immovable property. Further, a gift of a movable property can be effected either by registered instrument or by delivery of possession. So movable, either registered instrument or delivery of possession. But these provisions are not at all applicable for the gift under Mohammedan law. Very interesting to know this. So this is the basic difference between the gift under Hindu law and gift under Mohammedan law. The gift covered under Indian Succession Act and the gift covered under the Mohammedan law. What is required then? The question will arise, what is required? There are giving 3 essential conditions. If these 3 essentials are fulfilled, the gift is complete. And these 3 essentials are given in section 149 of this book. Section 149 says the 3 essentials of the gift under Mohammedan law. Number 1, a declaration of gift by the donor. There must be a declaration of the donor that this property I gifted to this B or this person. That declaration is, it may be oral, it may be written, but declaration is there. Second, an acceptance of the gift expressed or implied by or on behalf of the donee. Acceptance of the gift expressed or implied by or on behalf of the donee. There should be acceptance, express or implied. Express means that express acceptance. What is implied acceptance? For example, a bequeath property, a house, residential house, tenanted residential house owned by A. He bequeathed that to the B. Then B became, gifted, not bequeathed, gifted to B. Then on the basis of gift deed, B became owner. But the property is in possession of tenant. And after the gift deed, B started collecting the rent. So there is an implied acceptance. Express acceptance and implied acceptance. He started collection the rent from the tenant as if he is the owner. That is the implied acceptance on behalf of the donee. Then condition number 3, essential condition number 3. Delivery of possession of the subject matter of the gift by donor to the donee. First, declaration of gift. Second, acceptance implied or expressed by on behalf of donee, and delivery of possession. If these 3 essentials are fulfilled, then the gift under Mohammedan law is valid. It is complete. Now, if we see logically, we may think that how it is possible. The gift of immovable property, it's a transfer document, and it can be orally gifted without payment of any the stamp duty, without execution of any instrument, without there being any attesting witness, without there being any signature of the donee. How it is possible? And therefore, this particular issue was raised before so many high courts. Very interesting provision that the gift need not be registered, need not be attested, need not be it is relating to the entire property. So how it is the Registration Act 17 section is not applicable. Therefore, the matter went to various high courts from various states. In Andhra Pradesh, it was given. In Maharashtra in 1954, the matter was raised. So Jammu and Kashmir also the matter was raised. And there were different opinions, different views taken by various high courts. And ultimately the matter went to the Supreme Court of India in the year 2011. The Supreme Court of India had an occasion to deal with this issue in the year 2011. And finally, Supreme Court has delivered the judgment, which is reported in AIR 2011, Supreme Court, page number 1695. I repeat, AIR 2011, Supreme Court, page number 1695, in which Supreme Court has ruled that the gift deed, if it is not registered, not written, then also it is valid because it is approved by the Islamic customary law, and therefore the personal law is applicable as far as gift is concerned. These particular customs are protected as per Article 25 of the Constitution of the India, and therefore the provisions of Transfer of Property Act, provisions of Indian Registration Act are not applicable to the gifts under the Mohammedan law. I will read the judgment caption, that's a head note for your perusal. So very recent, very landmark judgment on this point, in which very important to tell you that AIR 1962 Andhra Pradesh full bench view overruled by this judgment. 1955 Maharashtra Law Journal division bench view overruled. 1974 Jammu Kashmir full bench ruling overruled, and 1985 Maharashtra Law Journal division bench judgment is also overruled. And the judgment of 2011 came as a law of the land, which has, it is held in this judgment by the Apex Court. I am just reading only the paragraph of the head note, very interesting. The three essentials of the gift under Mohammedan law are: 1. Declaration of the gift by the donor, 2. Acceptance of the gift by the donee, and 3. Delivery of possession. The rules of Mohammedan law do not make writing essential to the validity of the gift. An oral gift fulfilling all the three essentials make the gift complete and irrevocable. However, the donor may recover However, the donor may record the transaction of the gift in writing merely because the gift is reduced into the writing by Mohammedan instead of having been made orally. Such writing does not become a formal document or an instrument of a gift. When a gift could be made by Mohammedan orally, its nature and character is not changed because of it have been made by the written document. What is important for valid gift under the Mohammedan law is the three essential requisites must be fulfilled. The form is immaterial. If all the three essential requirements are satisfied, constituting a valid gift, the transaction of the gift would not be rendered invalid because it had been written on a plain paper or a paper. The distinction that if the written deed of gift recites the factum of prior gift, then such gift is not required to be registered. But when the writing is contemporaneous with the making of the gift, it must be registered, is inappropriate and not in conformity with the rules of the gift under Mohammedan law. So the high courts came to the conclusion that if there is a memorandum of the previous gift, then it need not, that instrument need not be registered. But the view was taken that if there is a contemporaneous document, if the gift is transferred on the basis of that document, then it must be registered. That view is also overruled by the Supreme Court, and it is held that though the gift is reduced into writing, only court has to see the three essential ingredients. It need not be registered, it need not be attested, whether these three condition declaration of gift is there, whether acceptance by the donee is there, whether delivery of possession is there. If the three ingredients are proved, then the gift is valid. So this is a landmark judgment on this point of the Supreme Court of India. Now section 150 of this particular book says the delivery of possession. A taking of possession of the subject matter of the gift by the donee, either actually or constructively, is necessary to complete the gift. So as I have stated the illustration regarding the tenanted house, the intention of the donor to divest himself of his interest is the manifest. The gift of his share is valid and operative in view of the fact that there can be a gift of undivided share. We are coming towards that. Bhusha, undivided share जर असेल तर सुद्धा गिफ्ट ते करता येतं. ते इलिगल होत नाही. त्यात सर्टन कंडिशन्स घातलेले आहेत काही प्रमाणात टू सर्टन एक्सटेंट, ते आपण पाहूया. But there can be a gift of undivided interest of the deceased Mohammed in the immobile property. So this particular point is also discussed in Bombay High Court judgment, that is 1975 Maharashtra Law Journal, page number 345. 1975 MHLJ, page number 345. About the proving of the gift. It is mentioned here in the Mohammedan law that if it is proved by the oral evidence that a gift is complete as required by the law, that is section 149, 150, the essentials, three essentials, then it is not required to be written nor registered under the provisions of section 70 of the Registration Act. It can be admissible in evidence if it is proved by oral evidence. So for proving the gift also, though that much efforts are required to be taken, as it are required to be taken under section 63 of Indian Succession Act for proving the will under Hindu law, and also for gift for examining the attesting witnesses and all the other aspects. Then section 153. Section 153 is a little privilege, a little exception given to the gift by husband to the wife or vice versa. What is mentioned here, we will see. Gift of immobile property by wife to a husband and a husband to a wife is valid even though the property is used by them for their joint residence. So as I stated earlier, that delivery of possession is one of the three essentials, but the Mohammedan law has given a sort of exception by enumerating this provision under the Mohammedan law, Islamic law. What is this provision? That there is exception for husband and wife. If the house is gifted by husband to wife or by wife to husband, and if they both are residing together, there is no delivery of possession, but it is valid under Mohammedan law. And it is decided in a judgment of Supreme Court also, AIR 2016, Supreme Court, page number 694. AIR 2016, Supreme Court, page number 694, in which the Supreme Court has ruled that the gift made by husband to wife or wife to husband is valid, though they are using that property together for their joint residence. Now we'll go further regarding some, as like this husband to wife, there is another exception given under the Mohammedan law as regards the acceptance on behalf of the donee. Section 155, gift to a minor by a father or other guardian. No transfer of possession is required in the case of gift by a father to his minor son, minor child, or by guardian to his ward. All that is necessary is to establish the bona fide intention to give. So here also there is sort of this exception to the rule of delivery of possession and rule of acceptance by donee. So transfer of possession is not required in case of a gift by a father to the minor child or by guardian to the ward. So this aspect is very clear. Then another aspect regarding the gift which is also relevant, which oftenly comes while dealing with the matters under the Mohammedan law, that is musha. What is musha? Musha is the Urdu word, of course. Musha is the undivided share. Musha is defined under section 158 of this book, Mullah's Principles of Mohammedan Law. Musha is an undivided share in a property, either movable or immovable. Section 159 is a gift of Muslim, if the gift of musha where property is undivisible. If the property is undivisible, what is the position of the gift of the musha? A valid gift can be made of an undivided share in property which is not capable of partition. For example, A bequeath a house to B along with the right to use a common staircase with adjacent owner. So the common staircase is not divisible. Though it can be gifted, a house can be gifted along with the right to use the staircase in common. So staircase ownership will be common. It is not divisible. It cannot be divided and it is to be used commonly. And therefore, this particular provision is given under Mohammedan law that if the property is undivisible, it can be gifted. Then another aspect of musha, if the gift of musha when property is divisible, property जर partition करता येत असेल तर partition करता येण्याजोगी असेल तर सामायिक प्रॉपर्टी मधल्या हिश्श्याचं बक्षीसपत्र करता येतं की नाही, that is the subject of this section 160 of the book of the Mullah's Principles of Mohammedan Law. आपण आता पाहिलं की musha undivided interest जर undivisible असेल तर प्रॉपर्टीचं गिफ्ट करता येतं. There is no hurdle. What about the position of divisible property? It is stated here, a gift of an undivided share in a property which is capable of division is irregular but not void. It is stated as irregular but not void. The gift being irregular and not void, it may be perfected and rendered valid by subsequent partition and delivery to the donee of the share given to him. So it can be validated if the musha, that is the share in a common property, is gifted to somebody. So what is the remedy for the donee to validate that particular gift? He has to go for a suit for partition and he has to take his share which was gifted to him by the donee. So this is the way out can be taken under the Mohammedan law. Then also there are some certain exceptions to this rule, where a gift is made by one co-sharer to another co-sharer, property divisible, not necessary, that still the gift is valid. Where the gift is of a share in zamindari, you know zamindari, charane zamindar, charane watandar, inamdar. This is the previous, the government assigns the property to certain big persons in the village to collect the revenue. So that share can be also gifted without division of the property because the government assessed that share separately. Then number 3, where the gift is of share in freehold property in a large commercial town. So house in a big city like Bombay, a flat. So it can be gifted. The share of in that property can be gifted. Though the property is divisible, the division is not necessary. And where where the gift is of a share in a land company, that can be also gifted. Then section 165 is another independent provision regarding the will enumerated under the Islamic customary law that the gift in the nature of trust. What is this gift? It is a conditional gift and it is contemplated under the Mohammedan law. For example, A can gift government promissory note to B with the condition that B should pay income thereof to A during his lifetime. The gift is valid. A government promissory note of fixed deposits काही receipts आहेत एका A व्यक्तीकडे, मुस्लिम व्यक्तीकडे. He can gift it to the B that these are the fixed deposit receipts of this 10 lakhs. I am gifting this to you. Now you are the owner of this particular promissory note or the fixed deposit receipts. But there is a condition that the interest on that receipt you must pay to me, you must give to me till my death. You are the owner of that principal amount. But you have to pay, you have to give the interest thereon to me till my death, and subsequently you became the owner. So that gift is also valid under the Mohammedan law. So this is a conditional gift enumerated under section 165. Then section 167 is a revocation of gift. As there is a document, there must be a provision of revocation, as it is we found in the will also. A gift may be revoked by the donor at any time before the delivery of possession. Very important the provision, because the reason is that before delivery of possession, the gift doesn't complete at all under Mohammedan law. So before completion of the gift, it can be revoked. If declaration is there, the property is it declared that it is gifted to particular person, and person has also shown his willingness to accept, but there is no delivery of possession. The gift is not complete because the third essential of the gift is not fulfilled, which is ruled in 2011 Supreme Court. And therefore, it can be revoked at any moment till the delivery of possession. But once the possession is delivered, it is irrevocable. It can be revoked after delivery of possession only by the decree of the court. If any issue came before the court and the court came to the conclusion on a particular ground in that particular dispute and came to the conclusion that the gift is not valid, then only the gift can be revoked after the delivery of possession. Therefore, as it is in Hindu law, gift is a transfer immediate, so it cannot be revoked. If it is transferred, is transferred. The title is vested with the donee. Title is transferred to the donee, and when title is transferred, it cannot be recovered. So here there is a little provision, little privilege given to the Mohammedan person that he can think over after execution of the gift, after declaration of the gift, after execution of the document, even it need not be documented, but if it is reduced to the writing, after writing or drafting of that will or after declaration of the will, he can wait for some time, for some months, some for years, for delivery of possession. And before that, if something happens, he can revoke the gift. So that privilege is given under Mohammedan law. Under Hindu law, it is not available. Once the gift deed is executed under section 123 of the Transfer of Property Act, it is registered under section 17 of the Indian Registration Act. The donor ceases to be the owner. The title transfers with the donee and it cannot be revoked. Of course, if the matter goes to the court on the ground of forgery, etc., undue influence, etc., and if it is declared by the decree of the court, that is a different question. But otherwise, it is irrevocable. Now, this is, friends, the nut and at a glance, the provisions regarding the gift. I tried to cover every aspect regarding the gift under Mohammedan law. So we completed will, we completed gift, and the last and the important and interesting act, that is the new enactment, Muslim woman right on marriage protection of the Muslim women on the Marriage Act. The act is known as the Muslim Women Protection of Rights on Marriage Act 2019. Now friends, this is the outcome of a very well-known and high-profile case of the Supreme Court of India. Till 2019, there was no protection to the married Muslim women, and married Muslim women can be divorced instantaneously by pronouncing uttering 3 times the word talaq. It is called a triple talaq, talaq-e-biddat. In the year 2015, one lady suffered from this practice, and she was on a fine morning divorced by her husband, and their marriage came to an end. There was no voice to the lady, because talaq-e-biddat is an instantaneous pronouncement of the triple talaq in the absence of even a wife. It is valid under the philosophy of Muslim religion, with the Islamic tradition, talaq-e-biddat. So the well-known case Shah Banu versus Union of India. This Shah Banu in the 2015 was divorced by her husband Rizwan Ahmed, and after that this lady filed a writ petition in the Supreme Court of India directly, and prayed to the Honorable Supreme Court that not only her talaq, which was administered on her, is void or invalid. He prayed to the Supreme Court that the practice of this talaq-e-biddat is unconstitutional, and it is to be declared by the Supreme Court as unconstitutional. After receiving this particular writ petition, Supreme Court called the written explanations from the Union of India, the central government, the Minority Affairs Ministry, the various institutions, various organizations of Muslims, women's, Muslim religions, Islamic religions, and they were called by their written statements to be filed before the Supreme Court till a certain date. When this particular filing of the writ petition and acceptance of the writ petition by the Supreme Court is published in the media, some institutions like All India Muslim organizations, women organizations, they came to the Supreme Court as interveners. They came and appeared before the Honorable Supreme Court as an intervener, because the issue was relating to the religious issue. It was relating to the religious Islamic culture and tradition, and it is relating to the entire the question of the religious feelings of the Mohammedan people, women and male, all, both. And therefore they intervened, and they were also admitted as a parties in this particular writ petition. And after receiving these written submissions, the Supreme Court of India has formed a constitutional bench of the 5 judges, consisting of the then Chief Justice of India, Justice J.S. Kehar, and there were other judges, Justice Rohinton Nariman, Justice Kuren Joseph, Justice Abdul Nazir, Kurian Joseph, and Uday Lalit. The bench was of 5 judges, and the matter was heard for continuously 7 days. And for interesting to say that the lawyers appeared in these matters, were the renowned and well-known lawyers of the country. The parties were Shaira Banu was the petitioner. Respondents were Union of India, Ministry of Law and Justice, Ministry of Women and Child Development, Ministry of Minority Affairs, National Commission of Women, All India Muslim Personal Law Board, and Rizwan Ahmed, who is the husband of Shaira Banu. Then interveners were Jamaatul Hind, then Center for Study of Society and Secularism, Jamit Ulama Hind, Bharatiya Muslim Mahila Andolan, etc., etc. So many institutions and organizations were also intervened, and the lawyers were very eminent. Very interesting to know that the Amit Chadda, the senior counsel of the Supreme Court of India, was representing Shaira Banu, the petitioner, and the constitutional bench of our Supreme Court has appointed the very renowned and experienced senior counsel of the Supreme Court, Salman Khurshid, as an amicus query in the matter. Then for respondents, Mukul Rohitgi, Kapil Sibal, and Manoj Goyal, they were representing for the government. And as far as interveners are concerned, they are also represented by the renowned lawyers of the Supreme Court. The interveners were represented by Ram Jethmalani, Indira Jaising, Anand Grover, and other renowned lawyers of the Supreme Court. And the matter was heard by the constitutional bench for continuously 7 days. And after that, the Supreme Constitutional Bench of the Supreme Court of India has delivered the judgment by 3-2 majority. The views were also not made common, because some institutions were supporting that the practice of talaq-e-biddat is unconstitutional, unhuman, it is illegal and against the interest of the woman. But some institutions, some organizations were of the view, and they were pressing the issue that this practice is a Islamic custom, is the result of Islamic law. It is based on the Quran, and therefore the court has no constitutional judicial jurisdiction to test the constitutional validity of this particular subject. It is out of the jurisdiction of Supreme Court, because it's a personal law, and this law is protected by Article 25 of the Indian Constitution. That was the view, that was the submissions of the some of the organizations. And at the end, the judgment is delivered by the majority of 3-2. And very surprisingly, the Honorable Chief Justice J.S. Kehar was dissenting judge in that judgment. The majority judges were Justice Rohington Nariman, Justice Uday Lalit, and Justice Kurian Joseph. And the dissenting view was taken by Chief Justice of India, the then Chief Justice of India, J.S. Kehar, and Justice Abdul Nazir. And it was declared finally by the constitutional bench of our Supreme Court of India that the practice of talaq-e-biddat, that is the instantaneous talaq by pronouncing triple talaq to Muslim lady, is unconstitutional. So after this decision, it is also expected by the constitutional bench of the Supreme Court that legislature must pass a act for protection of the woman on marriage. So there must be a protection of a act which can be passed by the legislature only, and the legislature should pass a act on this subject. That was the observation. And after this decision, for the first time in the year 2017, the bill was put before the Parliament. The same bill, the protection, the Muslim woman, protection of rights on marriage bill. In the year 2017, the bill was passed by Lok Sabha, but it was not passed. It cannot be passed in the Rajya Sabha due to some parties not supported the bill. Again, it was put before the Parliament in the year 2018. Then at that time also the Lok Sabha passed, but the upper house there was no majority, and therefore it couldn't pass. Again, the parliament election was held, and a particular party came into the clear majority, absolute majority. And again, in the year 2019, this bill, the bill was again, the first bill was lapsed, second bill was lapsed, and the third bill was put before the parliament. And in the year 2019, Lok Sabha has passed this bill, as well as the Rajya Sabha has passed the bill, and Honorable President of India, Honorable Ramnath Kovind, gave the assent, and this particular act came into force. That is on 31st of July 2019. This very small act indeed, but it's a very interesting legislation based on a high-profile case, Shah Banu versus Union of India. This law, this judgment will be remembered by the Indian people forever in future, because it has declared that the Talaq-e-Biddat is unconstitutional in India. And this particular act, having only 8 sections, in which 5 sections are relevant because the title and the definitions that are not relevant. Only 8 sections, I will tell you in short. Section number 3 in this act: any pronouncement of talaq by Muslim husband upon his wife by words either spoken or written or in electronic form or in any other manner whatsoever shall be void and illegal. Section 3. Then section 4. Any Muslim husband who pronounces talaq referred to in section 3 upon his wife shall be punished with imprisonment for the term which may extend to 3 years and shall also be liable to fine. So this is made an offense, and the punishment is 3 years and with fine. Section 5 in this act: without prejudice to the generality of the provision contained in any other law for the time being in force, a married Muslim woman upon whom talaq is pronounced shall be entitled to receive from her husband such amount as a subsistence allowance for her and depending children as may be determined by the magistrate. So provision is made for the subsistence allowance, which is compulsory, should be given by the husband to the wife and the depending children. Then section 6, notwithstanding anything contained in this any other law for the time being in force, a married Muslim woman shall be entitled to the custody of her minor children in the event of pronouncement of talaq by her husband in such a manner as may be determined by the magistrate. So the custody of the minor children are retained with the Muslim woman. She should not be deprived with their children. Otherwise, previously तिला कुठला अधिकारच नसायचा, तिला काहीच करायचं नाही, तिला तिच्या माघारी तलाक दिला तिला काही किंमत नसल्यासारखीच होती मुस्लिम वुमनला. तिला मुलांना हक्क सांगायचा नाही, प्रॉपर्टीमध्ये हक्क सांगायचा नाही. इद्दत पिरियड 3 महिन्याची पोटगी दिली की नवरा मोकळा झाला. ह्या प्रोव्हिजन्स ज्या होत्या त्या सगळ्या अनकॉन्स्टिट्युशनल झाल्या. आता याला कंटिन्युअस पिरियड म्हणजे ऍज अ मेंटेनन्स सारखंच आहे. हे सबसिस्टन्स अलाउन्स म्हटलेलं आहे, ते सबसिस्टन्स अलाउन्स त्यांना द्यायला पाहिजे आणि मुलांनाही द्यायला पाहिजे. देन सेक्शन 7, the last section which is relevant, it is divided into sub-clauses. Sub-clause A: an offense punishable under this act shall be cognizable if information relating to the commission of the offense is given to an officer in charge of the police station by the married woman upon whom talaq is pronounced or by person related to her by blood or marriage. So it is not just like other offenses as mentioned in the IPC or other law. Any person cannot set the law in motion. Here the aggrieved party, aggrieved person, there is the woman on whom the talaq is administered. She can file a complaint in the officer of the police before the police station, or his blood relatives or the relatives by the marriage. So near relative or her or the lady can file the complaint. Anybody cannot file the complaint. There is no locus standi to the general public. Then subsection B: an offense punishable under this act shall be compoundable at the instance of married woman upon whom talaq is pronounced with the permission of the magistrate on such terms and conditions as he may determine. So this act is made compoundable. but subject to condition that married woman upon whom the talaq is pronounced, she should admit the compounding of the offense. And therefore, it is compoundable at the instance of only married women. Then subclause C. No person accused of an offense punishable under this act shall be released on bail unless the magistrate on an application filed by the accused and after hearing the married Muslim woman upon whom talaq is pronounced is satisfied that there are reasonable grounds for granting bail to such person. So the offense is cognizable and bail cannot be granted unless hearing is given to the married woman, and it is not available if at all the magistrate thinks fit that yes, in such circumstances the bail can be granted, then only bail can be granted, otherwise bail can be rejected. So this is the enactment of 2019 passed by the legislature, which enactment is made only with intent to protect the rights of Muslim women on her marriage, and therefore this act has given the tremendous relief to the Muslim woman and protection to the Muslim woman on her marriage. So this is the act, very small act, and having only 8 sections. And I have already stated that as far as possible, I have tried to cover all these 3 subjects: will, gift under Mohammedan law, and this Muslim Women Protection on Marriage Act 2019. So with this, I conclude here, and I request my learned friend Sangram Desai ji to take the charge. Over to you, Sangram.
Yes, Mr. Khandeparkar. Okay. Yes. Ronit sir, there are a few questions.
Yes.
I will put up these questions to you.
Yeah.
Okay. So the first question is relating to marriage and divorce. And this is from Advocate Amok Karandikar. The question is, what is the procedure for divorce? Is there any provision in the new act?
No, there is no provision in the new act because this act is enacted for giving protection to the Muslim woman on the marriage. It is relating to the talaq-e-biddat, the instantaneous triple talaq. That procedure, that practice is declared unconstitutional. Therefore, it is covered only as far as talaq-e-biddat is concerned. So as far as divorce is concerned, there is another act under which the Mohammedan man or woman can file a suit for divorce in a civil court, and their marriage can be declared as the divorce can be declared by the decree of dissolution of marriage. So they can file a suit under the provisions of I will tell the act. Dissolution of Marriage, Muslim Marriage Act 1939.
Okay, sir. Okay.
Dissolution of Muslim Marriage Act 1939.
Okay, okay, sir. Then, sir, there is one more question. The question is how an oral will can be proved, and what are the circumstances or essential ingredients required to be brought on record in proof of such oral will?
Yes, you see, as compared to Hindu law, there are no such a strict restrictions provided under Mohammedan law to prove the will. First reason is that he is not at liberty to bequeath the entire property. There are limits, and the protection of heirs are already given to the heirs because heirs are protected by their 2/3 residue, and will is not required to be written, not required to be signed, not required to be registered, not required to be attested. Therefore, the convincing oral evidence is contemplated, it is expected for proving the will under Mohammedan law. It is not that strict as it is required under section 63 of the Indian Succession Act, but it can be proved by giving best evidence available under section 68 of the Indian Evidence Act.
Okay. Okay. There is one more question from Advocate Wasim Sayyed.
Yeah.
And his question is, can a will or a gift be given to a non-Muslim person? So Muslim person, whether he can give by will or gift to a Hindu or any other person?
No, he cannot, because that law is Muslim personal law, and the provisions enumerated are applicable to the Muslims only.
Okay. There is one more question which says whether a written will can be revoked by a subsequent oral will.
Yes, it can be revoked. It can be revoked either by implied act of the testator also. Not written will is also required. It can be revoked at any time prior to the death of the testator.
Okay. Now I'll take this as the last question. The question is, what will be the grounds available for divorce under the act which you mentioned?
That there are the grounds are mentioned in that act. This act is not covered today, Act of 1939, but cruelty and all others grounds are given. The adultery is also covered, I think. But I have not that studied minutely that act today.
Okay. Okay. Yes, I have covered almost all the questions, Ravani sir. Thank you very much for this wonderful lecture. I know you had a very less time to prepare for this lecture, and only on request of all the lawyers from Ratnagiri, Sindhudurga, especially from Bombay, you prepared yourself for this lecture in a very short time. I thank you very much on behalf of all the participants of this lecture. Thank you very much for this wonderful lecture.
Thank you, Sangram. Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Tomorrow, by the way, I'll just make an announcement. Tomorrow we are having a webinar. This is again a webinar which will be part 2, like that of yours. This webinar will be held on medical jurisprudence. Advocate Atre sir from Jalgaon, who had already held a webinar for us, we had so many questions for him, and we have compiled those questions which were asked by different lawyers from different parts and send it across to Advocate Atre sir from Jalgaon. And tomorrow he will be discussing all these aspects with us on medical jurisprudence, and mostly 3 important aspects. Firstly, it will be asphyxia, different kinds of asphyxia. Number 2, injuries in case of sexual offenses. And number 3, injuries like stab, puncture, and incised wound. These are the 3 topics which we will cover in tomorrow's lecture. So I request all the participants to kindly join at 4 p.m. tomorrow. Thank you very much for participating in this webinar. Thank you very much.